First meeting is called to order. Ms. Carlson, do you have a motion?
I do. I move that the Albemarle County Public School Board go into a closed meeting as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia under subsection 1 for the discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. And subsection 8 for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Carlson, second by Mr. Alcaro, that we go into closed session. Ms. Johnston, we'll take a roll call on that.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, so we'll move into.
See you over there.
Right. All right. The time is 6:30, and I call this April 1st meeting of the Albemarle County School Board to order. Ms. Carlson, do you have a motion?
Yes, I do. I move that the board certify by recorded vote that to the best of each board member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion authorizing the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Second.
Okay, been moved by Ms. Carlson, second by Ms. Lee, that we certify that the only things that were talked about in the closed session was what was in the motion to begin with. So Ms. Johnston, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes,
Motion passed.
the motion carries. There's one motion out of the closed session, Mr. Alcaro.
I move that we approve 6 student representatives for the next school year with 4 quarterly representatives beginning on July 1st and 2 alternates serving for 2 6-month periods. I further move that we approve Ajiana Johnson from Murray, David Antrubius from Monticello, Elizabeth Alberon from Monticello, Kennedy Mason from Albemarle, Alexander Hild from Western, and Katharina Ravi Chandran. I'm sorry, Katharina, if I'm messing up your name. She is from Albemarle High School as well.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Alcaro, second by Ms. Lee, that we approve of the 6 total student reps, 4 that will be serving, 2 as alternates. Ms. Johnston, could you please call the roll on that motion?
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes. Okay, so the motion carries.
Yes.
We will now have a moment of silence. All right, thank you. And I will be reading this into our minutes. The minutes of this meeting should reflect that this meeting is being held electronically, pursuant to Virginia state law and Albemarle County ordinance, because the COVID-19 pandemic makes it impracticable and unsafe to assemble a quorum physically in a single location. The meeting is being communicated to the public electronically through Zoom and streamed live on the Albemarle County Public Schools website. And public comments may be offered through the Zoom waiting room feature in accordance with the school board's protocol or by written submission. And to introduce the members of our board and to make sure that they are all present and accounted for. Dr. Kate Acuff.
Kate Acuff, representing Jack Jewett District.
Mr. John O. Alcaro.
John O. Alcaro at large.
Vice Chair Katrina Carlson.
Katrina Colson, Rio District.
Judy Lee.
Judy Lee, Rivanna District.
Dave Oberg is absent tonight. Ellen Osborne.
Ellen Osborne, Scottsville District.
I'm Graham Page, Samuel Miller District. And tonight we are very pleased to have our new student rep who will be with us from now until June 30th. Ms. Layla Bonds. And Layla is going to introduce herself. We are so pleased to have you tonight, Layla. And Layla is here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
All right, yeah, Layla. All right, thank you.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Layla Barnes. I am currently a senior at Albemarle High School, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to be a student rep here on the school board, and I just can't wait to bring my ideas to the table and to hopefully make some powerful changes here in our school system.
Okay, thank you very much, Layla. And make sure that whenever you do have anything to bring to the board, that you let us know. We are always very pleased to have input from our student rep. So make sure that you jump right in whenever you have anything to present to the board.
And Mr. Page, I might add that I'm super excited to see Layla joining the board. And just to back up what Mr. Page said, if there's anything you need that we can help you be the best board member that you can be, I'm here at your service, and so is my staff. So I'm super excited to see you on the board, Layla.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, Layla.
Thank you.
All right, I now need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, second by Dr. Acuff, moved by Mr. Alcaro, that we approve the agenda. I guess we'll do this by voice vote too. So Ms. Johnston.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes,
Motion passed.
motion carries. All right, I need a motion to approve our consent agenda for tonight.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, moved by Mr. Alcaro, second by Ms. Osborne, that we approve the consent agenda. Ms. Johnston.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Our next item on our agenda is the spotlight on education. Ms. Carlson.
Thank you, Chair Page. Prior to the pandemic, I'll just go ahead and start. Prior to the pandemic a year ago, about 6% of the families visiting the Blue Ridge Food Bank were first timers, a number that might have seemed surprising to many of us who live in a county with a growing economy. The truth is that there have always been families who have struggled to make ends meet and that they were not always in plain sight. The pandemic has changed that. The number of first-time users of the food bank went from 6% to 20% over the past year, highlighting the crisis that existed in many of our homes. When a young lady from Albemarle High School realized what was happening in communities around her, she organized Students Working Against Hunger, also known as SWAG, to reduce food insecurity in those homes. In the intervening months, this club has gone from about a dozen students to more than 50. So our community hero, Kat Ravi Chandran, established the WISH program, in which she and her peers established a WISH program. I'm assuming that's supposed to be swag program, in which she and her peers convinced local restaurants to donate leftover food for those in need. She led a food drive for the Haven and organized a fundraiser for the Monacan Indian Nation. I also believe she is going to be one of our alternate student reps, which is amazing. The week after next, on April 12th, Kat will assume the responsibility for one of the food bank's most important community outreach programs, its annual school fund drive. The drive is the food bank's single largest community outreach program, usually generating enough supplies for 54,000 meals. I know that Agner Herd is participating, and after spring break, we're supposed to bring food to it. So hopefully other board members can bring food as well. To give you an idea of the need, the food bank serves 23,000 people. So the school food drive, the largest community outreach program, provides a little over 2 meals per person. I'd like to ask Kat to tell us how she became involved in this essential community service, what she has learned about our community this past year, and how we can support our SWAG students during the month of April. And Kat, by the way, already has agreed to lead the school food drive in 2022.
Hi, thank you so much. So in winter of 2020, we had a guest speaker come in to our school, and they told us that 1 in 6 people in the Albemarle-Charlottesville area struggle with hunger. And I think anybody who hears that number would want to help. And when I found out that there wasn't a specific club at Albemarle that was specializing in combating food insecurity, I connected with some of my friends, and we founded the Students Working Against Hunger SWAG club. And it started with just a dozen members, but now it's grown into an official nonprofit with over 50 members. And some of the things that we've learned through that have been, well, first of all, the magnitude of the issue, which has only been exacerbated during the pandemic. And that 1 in 6 number is now burgeoning on 1 in 5 people in our community. But I think the second thing that we've learned is that even though this pandemic is worsening the issue, it doesn't mean that we can't still find ways to help, even albeit not the orthodox methods. Just because we can't go and volunteer in a warehouse or go and volunteer at a food distribution site doesn't mean that we can't still put on socially distanced events, socially distanced fundraisers, still connect restaurants that produce excess food with local pantries. And I think we've learned that as long as you're passionate about a cause, we can still find ways in our community to support them. And then I think another thing that we've learned that sort of goes hand in hand with that is that no matter how isolated this pandemic has made us, that we're still more connected in the sense of like a community passion for just improving the community with all these areas of improvement that we can see. And that sort of leads me into why I'm here today, which is to talk about the school food drive for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, which is going to be taking place from April 12th to April 30th. And so while the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank sees heightened donations in the holiday season, by the time the spring gets around, their donation yields severely decrease. But just because those donation yields are decreasing doesn't mean that they're not serving over 100,000 consumers, clients every single month. And so the school food drive, which is the largest community outreach program that they put on all year, offers the chance to fill that donation yield hole. And I think it also offers an opportunity as a community to come together and support it. So we currently have around a dozen schools in the county signed up, and I urge all the schools participating, families, students, teachers, to really participate and show that we can have a positive impact on our community. And schools who aren't participating to contact Food Drive at brafb.org and email them, and so we can get as many schools in the county participating, and we can really all come together and work to help our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kat. That is really a extra special drive, extra special project that you're undertaking. So thank you so very much for doing that and coming to us to present your information. Any board members with any questions or comments for Kat?
I guess I had 2 questions. Maybe they're myths that I've heard, but you probably know the answer, Kat. One is, monetary donations go a long way too for the food bank, right? Because do they have access to buying things in bulk?
Yes, $1 to the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank could serve 4 meals. And so obviously monetary donations go a long way, and those can all be done on the website, brafb.org.
Awesome. And then the next question I have for you, which might have the answer as well, is when you're looking through your pantry for things that you maybe haven't used, maybe this sounds crazy, but it's like for canned goods, does it have to be, is there like does it have to be before, like what kind of things are you looking for, and what can you pull out of your pantry? Because I know a lot of this isn't like you have to go out and buy food for this drive. It's going through your pantry and saying like, oh, I have all this stuff that I'm never going to use, and I've overbought, like 20 cans of beans for some reason.
Yeah, well, we really urge anything and everything that you can find in your pantry, because the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank can make those decisions as to what works best and what won't work, but they would rather do that, and they can decide, as opposed to you thinking, oh, maybe this isn't good enough, but that could potentially go a long way for a person in need.
Awesome.
Ms. Ravi Chandran, I have to tell you that I really applaud your work in this area. It's something that's near and dear to me too, because I've been a Meals on Wheels driver for 7 or 8 years, and a regular donor to our food banks. And so I applaud everything you're doing, and I just have a feeling this will be a great success.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do.
Any other comments from any other board members? If not, Kat, thank you again for all of your great work. And we look forward to seeing you as an alternate later on this year. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
We have 2 resolutions tonight also. The first will be read by Ms. Lee, Ms. Judy Lee.
Thank you, Chair Page. We just observed National Women's History Month here in the United States. One of its purposes was to join in commemorating and encouraging the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role women play in American history. Earlier this week, we received an advanced look at just who we will be celebrating in future years, and 4 of these extraordinary young women, I'm proud to say, are our students. The annual Emily Couric Leadership Forum Scholarship Awards were announced this week, and in the words of the forum, their awards are designed to encourage all women to adopt an active role in government, public issues, and policy debates affecting their communities, and to inspire young women to pursue activities that will empower them to become effective leaders. For the 2nd consecutive year, the top award, the Emily Couric Leadership Scholarship, was earned by an Albemarle High School student, and this year she's Aditi Prakash. Aditi plans a career in education policy, especially to help bring the love of science to disadvantaged students. She will receive $35,000 toward her college education at Stanford University. The recipient of the forum's Joshua J. Scott Merit Award and a $15,000 scholarship is Rachel Field from Monticello High School. Of course, we all remember Rachel's medical research project from her appearance before us last month. 2 other students received $7,000 scholarships from the forum, Mia Shiner from our charter school and Kimball Sheehan from Western Albemarle High School. Aditi and Rachel were able to join us this evening, and under normal circumstances, I would ask them to join us at the podium so that we could shake their hands. In this virtual world, however, I wonder if we could all applaud and give a thumbs up to these extraordinary young women and tell them that we all are looking forward to reading about their impressive accomplishments in future years.
Chair Graham,
Yeah, are our 2 recipients that's here, are they going to make any remarks or not?
Hi, thank you
Second,
so much for, everything that you guys do. And as someone who's very passionate about education, just being here is so exciting for me. We really appreciate all the work you've been doing through this pandemic, and thank you so much.
All right, and congratulations on that great scholarship. Really
Thank you.
keep up the good work. And the other recipient that's here is Ms.
Yeah,
Lee?
hi.
Oh, hi. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I spoke to you all last month, and I would express my gratitude for everything that you did, and that you always do. But I just want to emphasize that one of the reasons that I think this scholarship that I've won and that Aditi has won, as well as the other recipients in the Charlottesville-Albemarle area, I think one of the reasons that it's so important is because we get that recognition of female leaders in our area that shows young women in elementary and middle school, and even younger than us in high school, that they can also be ambitious in achieving their dreams. So thank you for helping to recognize that and publicize it for everybody and advance that goal in our community. I really appreciate it.
Thank you both. We are so pleased to have both of you with us tonight. A round of applause.
Yes, absolutely.
And the namesake of that scholarship, Emily Couric, was really a great leader here in Central Virginia before she passed. So I again, congratulate both of you. Keep up the good work. We also have a resolution that's going to be read by Mr. Alcaro.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Whereas over the past year, the school division has transitioned from stage 1 with all students virtual to stage 4 with more than 8,000 students in schools, while maintaining a learning environment described by the health department as one of the safest locations in the greater community for students during the pandemic. Whereas more than 180 building services professionals have been at the forefront of the program to keep schools and offices safe by improving heating and air conditioning systems, installing air purifiers in all classrooms and isolation rooms, obtaining adequate personal protective equipment for employees without undue delay, retrofitting 900 classrooms to meet physical distancing guidelines. And whereas the building services team purchased and installed over 1,000 desks as part of this process, while moving all previous furniture in these classrooms to newly leased storage space without disruption to school operations or the safety of students and staff. And whereas building services professionals created new learning environments in common areas and continue to faithfully implement the COVID-19 cleaning and disinfectant protocols that made it possible to safely more than triple the number of students able to resume in-person instruction. And whereas the team made possible the timely delivery of health and wellness equipment and procedures used by every school to screen students, staff, visitors. And whereas this year, the team took on a new assignment by undergoing training in the painting of schools, applying more than 775 gallons of paint without disturbing school operations. And whereas since this work previously was completed by outside vendors and had been postponed by the pandemic last summer, the team saved the school division more than $200,000. And whereas a thankful school administrator has requested an opportunity to have students and staff be able to formally express their appreciation for the dedication and excellence that the building services team has devoted to their health, well-being, and success throughout the pandemic. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board wholeheartedly supports that request and calls upon all schools to express their appreciation to their building services partners. And furthermore, hereby proclaims the week of April 12th through 16th, Building Services Appreciation Week in the Albemarle County School Division.
Thank you, Mr. Alcaro. And we certainly will support the idea of having Building Service Appreciation Week during the week from 12th through the 16th. So let's give our Building Services Department a round of applause or thumbs up. Thank you all so much. Do we have any other school board or superintendent business or announcements at this time? Dr. Haas.
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Page.
Okay. We are now ready for our public comment. Ms. Carlson.
Thank you, Chair Page. I'm going to start off by reading the public comment guidelines. The school board invites and actively seeks the public's input in the matters relevant to school board governance and provides for time during its business meetings to hear from Albemarle County residents and community members. As authorized by ordinance of the County of Albemarle, the school board will hold its meetings electronically during the pandemic. The school board is nevertheless committed to encouraging public comment despite its need to meet on a virtual basis. And for this reason, there will be two ways for the public to provide comment. First, as always, written comments can be submitted to the school board clerk and will be given to all of the school board members for review. And second, as long as the school board holds its meetings electronically, members of the public wishing to provide public comment may sign up online by 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. Before electronic public comment commences, I'm going to announce the order in which the speakers will comment. We have 17 speakers today, so I'll announce them 3 at a time so you know when you're up. And then when it's that speaker's turn to provide comment, you will have 2 minutes to speak. It's been lowered to 2 minutes. It's not the 3 minutes that it normally is. I will give you an indication when there's 1 minute left. Speakers during the meeting or those submitting written comments should state their name and address, our magisterial district, and speakers should limit comments to those matters that are relevant to school board governance or the operations of the school division. Lastly, although the school board will not respond to comments made during the public comment period, school board members may address comments at the end of the meeting agenda under other business. So with that read, I will go ahead and announce the first 3 speakers. We have Mason Rothenberger, Caitlyn Boyd, and Rashimi Guy. Mason, if you are on, sometimes that takes me a while to see. Yep, I see.
Hi. Sorry, I had to turn my camera on. Hi, my name is Mason Rothenberger, and I am a student of Western Albemarle High School. I would like to speak to the school board tonight about the 4x4 schedule for next year. I, as a student, would like to let you know that the 4x4, while it was intended to reduce student stress, did not do that. I specifically, and I know that this does not apply to all students, I'm taking quite a few AP classes. And it is really difficult to have classes that you have taken in the first semester that you need to review in the second semester, and then also be learning additional content in the second semester. It puts a lot of pressure on students because it's not like you're taking 3 AP classes over the entire school year. It's like you took 2 in the first semester and then you're taking 3 in the second semester. I would really, really plead you to go to a 7-period or 8-period schedule, because that's going to help students learn a lot better. Interleaving classes every other day has been shown to drastically improve how students retain information from all of those classes, and students who return to classes, the same classes day after day after day, they're getting really tired of those classes, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed and get behind and stress yourself out over that. So I understand why the decision was made, but it has not worked out that way. Students are more stressed, and I can tell you from a Western perspective, students are not going to stop taking APs. So they're going to continue to have these stresses going forward, and that is really detrimental to our mental health. Thank you. I don't think I've used my 2 minutes, but thank you.
You did not. Thank you for those comments. The next speaker will be Caitlyn Boyd. Ms.
Good
Boyd.
evening. My name is Caitlyn Boyd, and I'm a junior at Western Alma High School as well. I'll start off by saying that I am so thankful to be back in person 2 days a week, and I cannot wait to be back in person 5 days a week, hopefully soon. I'm speaking tonight to explain why I hope we get rid of the 4x4 schedule for next school year. The 4x4 is incredibly hard to manage and inconvenient for students. Teachers have only half the amount of time to get through the same amount of coursework. Although we have class 4 times a week instead of 2, this extra class time doesn't help with homework and longer assignments like projects. A 4x4 schedule means that all assignments have to be completed in half the time they would be in a normal year-long schedule. Because everything is virtual, assignments are often due at midnight the very same day they're assigned, which is very stressful for students participating in extracurriculars. It's easy for students to fall behind and hard for them to get back on track. Another problem with the 4x4 is that because classes are divided into semesters, student schedules can be very lopsided and end up with their easier classes in one semester and their hard classes in the other semester. Although the 4x4 isn't ideal for anyone, it is especially hard for students taking AP classes. Exams are still being given in May and early June, which means that students who choose to take exams for their first semester AP classes will be taking a test in May or even June for a class they are in from September through January. As well as many of my classmates, I am currently having to manage studying for AP exams for classes I haven't taken since January, while still completing all the work for my current classes. I understand that a 4x4 schedule makes it easier to focus as students only have to keep track of 4 classes at a time instead of 8. However, it has done a lot more harm than good in the past year, particularly to student stress levels. I'm concerned that ACPS is leaning towards keeping the 4x4 schedule for next year because it's the easiest option. I'm sure that it is, especially if you're planning on offering optional virtual instruction next year. But the easiest way out is never what is best for students, and ACPS did not become a good school district by choosing the easy option. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I truly hope we'll be back in a year-long class schedule in August.
Caitlin, that was perfect timing. And I forgot to mention, thank you, Caitlin and Mason, for coming to speak. I know I'm always excited when we have students come and provide comment. Next up will be Rashmi Guy. And I see you on.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I am in the Whitehall district and my daughter is a 2nd grader at Crozet Elementary. I have concerns about the proposed school calendar for the 2021-22 school year. It appears that there are monthly half-day planning days included in the calendar. With this calendar, there will be very few weeks during the school year that students will be going to school for an entire week uninterrupted. Our children have lost so much instructional time last year and this year, and I do not believe asynchronous learning is equivalent to instructional time. I view asynchronous assignments as homework with a caregiver who is often not a certified teacher having to manage and assist with these assignments, especially for the younger grades. Further, half days put a huge burden on working parents who have to find childcare for the second half of the day. Many programs, including EDEP, operate only on full days for teacher work days. I know teachers have expressed concern about the lack of planning time and agree they should have adequate time, perhaps using existing teacher work days and moving all professional development to the summer before school starts, or adding a couple of full day teacher work days to the calendar dedicated to planning, with the lost instructional time made up. I would also like to express support for school to be in person Monday through Friday for the full day starting the first day of school for all students in K through 12 who wish to return. Our children's mental health and loss of learning outweighs the risks at this time for many families. With teachers prioritized to be vaccinated, there shouldn't be a reason for school not to be in person 5 days a week with safety precautions in place. The CDC and Dr. Fauci said that 3 feet of distancing with masking may be acceptable. Also, Moderna and Pfizer are now conducting vaccine clinical trials for children under the age of 12. With the uncertainty surrounding how ACPS will start, I know several parents who are pulling their kids out of public school and securing spots in private school, which will ultimately affect our school funding. Please plan to fully reopen our schools in the fall of 2021. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Guy. Ms. Guy, am I pronouncing your name right? The last name?
Perfect. It's okay. You pronounce it perfectly.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. So the next 3 speakers are going to be Adam Cohen, Alexandra Rebbaum, and Lisa Metters. Mr. Cohen, if you're on, I see you. Great.
Hi, thank you. My name's Adam Cohen. I live in the Samuel Miller District, and our family has 3 kids in the HCPS system. I'm here to respectfully ask the board to prioritize a move to stage 5 before the end of this year, and a commitment to return to 5-day full-time in-person learning for all grade levels in the fall. The ACPS website states that together, the school board and the superintendent take primary responsibility for ensuring that ACPS is an effective school system. An effective school system, among other things, assures that its focus is on both quality and equity. Quality and equity. Speak to any student, teacher, or parent locally, and the majority will tell you, we've already heard tonight, without question, that virtual learning is not of the same quality as in person, despite the best efforts of teachers and staff, which are absolutely appreciated. Our kids are resilient, but online and asynchronous work deprives students of the personal connections with teachers and classmates that are so important and drive true learning gains. Our children and many of their peers are incredibly happy to be back in school even 2 days a week. They show much more engagement and enthusiasm for their classwork, and they report that learning in person is far superior to learning virtually. They would do anything to be back in school full time. It's also hard to see how hybrid schedules are equitable to all students. Some are able to manage with a parent who stays home, but for many working parents, a 2-day on, 3-day off schedule is not feasible. Without a consistent in-person option, families are forced to make hard choices or accept educational, emotional, and economic losses. I urge you not to write off the remainder of this year as a lost cause, and to commit to return to 5 full days for all students by next fall. With teachers vaccinated and updated guidance reducing recommended spacing below 6 feet, there's still plenty of time to get kids back in school and begin to close the gap before next year. We're depending on you to stop the negative compounding effects of remote learning and get our kids back on track. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Cohen. The next speaker will be Ms. Rebhorn.
Hi, Alexandra Rebhorn, and I have a student at Burley and a student at Monticello High School. First, I'd like to thank the school board members and the superintendent for offering this opportunity to speak. I would also like to extend my deepest appreciation to them and to all the administrators and teachers who made this school year possible. I was completely in favor of online learning for this school year, and I equally supported the hybrid when it became feasible. I am now adding my voice to those who are in favor of returning fully in person next year. My reason for addressing the board this evening is the 4x4 schedule that is rumored to be implemented in high schools in 21-22. It is troubling to me that some guidance counselors in the county are already presenting this to parents as a done deal with no discussion by this body. Some are just asking for input, but others have openly announced it as decided. As the parent of a student who took AP classes this year and who is slated to take several more next year, I am totally disheartened by this plan, and I hope I can be reassured by this body that it will not be taken up without discussion, particularly since it was previously in place several years ago and was discarded because it did not successfully serve students. As far as I can tell, the 4x4 was implemented this year because of the need to teach virtually. To that end, I am not objecting to it retroactively, but it is clear that this decision was driven by administrative and scheduling needs, not for pedagogical reasons. I have spent the last 2 weeks talking to parents, students, and teachers about what is to be gained by continuing a 4x4 in an in-person environment, and I have yet to hear a reason that supports better learning outcomes. I have heard it is easier to schedule, easier for online, and good for those who want to graduate early. I profoundly reject all those arguments. I also am prepared to counter those who say it is similar to college, because it is not. College classes don't meet every day, and you don't take an evaluative exam like the AP 6 months later. There are more counter arguments to offer, but not in the limited time I have today, and your students already did it for me. Bottom line, we aren't here to do easy and quick. We are here to do well. Those of us engaged in education are charged with providing the best we can, regardless of expediency. I urge the board to carefully consider the opinions of teachers and students who have already been pressed to the limit when they discuss continuing the 4x4 schedule. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Redmond. The next speaker will be Lisa Metters. And I see you
Thank
on.
you for having me. Thank you. My name is Lisa Metters, and I am from the Ravenna district. I have an 8th grader at Sutherland and an 11th grader at Albemarle. Here is a portion of an open letter petition composed by the ACPS Families for Safe Open Schools group. After just 1 week, the petition has 863 signatures from parents and community members across the county. Dear Dr. Haas and school board members, we are writing in support of a full-time, 5-day, fully in-person instructional option for all ACPS students, no later than fall 2021, in addition to a high-quality virtual option, with educators dedicated to a single model of instruction, either in person or virtual. We make this request in full recognition of all that has been done to date. We acknowledge and appreciate the incredible efforts of teachers, staff, the administration, and the school board to accommodate ever-changing circumstances this school year. However, it is now time to plan for the next school year, and the goal must evolve. With the availability of vaccines, more data on transmission, and the importance of in-person learning for student mental health, the benefits of full-time in-person school now outweigh the risks. We support looking at best practices from nearby school systems, getting more detailed feedback from all stakeholders, taking advantage of increased funds for capital improvements and staffing needs, and working in collaboration to make this goal a reality. Speaking on my own behalf, as I understand the law that Governor Northam just signed yesterday, Virginia State Law SB 1303, the law requires each school board to offer in-person instruction to each student enrolled in the local school division for at least the minimum number of required instructional time, which is 180 days or 990 hours each school year. This law does not mean a hybrid option of 8 to noon for some and 1 to 4 p.m. for others, with virtual or async at home as the other half of learning. It does mean a full-time, 5-day, fully in-person instructional option. The law also requires a high-quality virtual option. We are asking for what the state wants for our students as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Next up, I will announce the next 3 speakers. It's going to be Kristen Smith, Charles Collier, and Julie McCulloch. So Ms. Smith, if you are on. Look.
She withdrew her name.
Awesome. So we'll have Charles Collier, Julie McCulloch, and then Sarah Kirby. And I see Charles on. Make sure you unmute.
Always forget. My bad. Hi, I'm Charles. I'm a junior at Western, and I have some things to say about the proposed continuous 4-day schedule and the 4x4 schedule that has been proposed. I'm in disagreement of both of them. I think we need to be back in schools by, as many have said before me, 5 days a week in person, 7 hours a day, by fall at the maximum. In-person learning has been shown to be much better than online learning. And it's not just a grade difference, it's just the knowledge that we can retain going, learning with a person, having personal connections with teachers. If we're online for another year, I think people like juniors and seniors are going to be struggling to figure out who they can ask to write college recommendations. So that's the biggest reason why I think we need to have in-person teachers again. I think I'll just end it there. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Charles. And again, thank you. Like I said, I always appreciate when I get to hear from students. So thank you for making time to come speak with us. The next speaker, let me reset my timer, will be Julie McCulloch.
Hi, I have 2 students at Western. I have a freshman and a junior. I'm going to reiterate a few points that some other people made about the 4x4 schedule, and I have a lot to get through, so I'm going to try to hit them like bullet points, but thank you for having me. The 4x4 schedule has the following negative impacts on the student experience. It interrupts the flow of coursework that builds on one another. Foreign language coursework and math coursework can be interrupted by a full calendar year, depending on which semester the students assign the courses. It prevents integral cross-curricular courses from having their full impact, such as global studies, where English and history curriculums have been designed to support and enrich one another. Many students are having these courses sequentially in the 4x4 schedule instead of concurrently. It harms the development of the student-teacher relationship. It often takes a few months for teachers and students to fall into a rhythm and routine with one another where relationships can form. In the 4x4 schedule, the relationship is just starting to deepen when the course winds down and a new semester with new teachers begins. These important relationships are never fostered, which enrich a student's experience in school. There's no way to consistently schedule a balanced group of classes each semester for students. Students have the potential to be academically overloaded one semester and have a lighter load or primarily electives the other. For seniors, this will impact the coursework and grades they submit on their college applications in the first semester. The entire AP testing experience is hamstrung. We've heard a little bit about that from the students. And if you think about it, for rising seniors, this will be 3 years of inadequate opportunities for appropriate AP testing because last spring they were messed up. This year they're getting screwed up by AP classes in the fall, trying to test in the spring, et cetera. And the same thing could happen next year. The arts are taking a huge hit. Band, which should be a year-long class, was limited to one semester this year. It precluded many lifelong band members from participating and removed an integral part of the high school experience for band members. While high school sports continued, band was marginalized, thus marginalizing a huge group of students whom band is the highlight of their non-academic experience. And by cutting band, they have to either choose marching band in the fall or orchestra in the spring. And one last thing, the kids at Center One, if you go to 4x4 schedule, they have to miss an entire semester at their home-based school. So you're basically taking a group of kids and isolating them from their high school for a whole semester. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can appreciate that it went from 3 minutes to 2 minutes.
I know, I was taking so much
thank you
Charles'
for
time.
taking the time. So next up, we have Sarah Kirby, which I don't see a Sarah Kirby on the meeting.
She withdrew her name as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the next 3 speakers after that will be Sarah Strassheim, Jennifer Mccoon, and Christine Koenig.
Hi, my name is Sarah Strassheim. I live in the Scottsville district and have 2 children in Albemarle schools, a 4th grader at Stone Robinson and a 6th grader at Burley. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My daughter Claire has a wonderful 4th grade teacher and really a team of 4th grade teachers at Stone Robinson who are doing an amazing job. But the experience she's having with only 2 days a week of education is completely inadequate, given what I know is usually taught in 4th grade. Even though she's very bright, my husband and I are very involved parents, and we pay for a sitter to help oversee her asynchronous learning time, she is still well behind what she should be learning in full-time 4th grade education. 4th and 5th graders are getting left behind in the current model. They are the only students in the county not getting 4 days of synchronous learning. They're being set up for incredibly difficult years of catching up in middle school. All elementary school age kids need to be back in at least 4 days a week schedule as soon as possible. The evidence shows that outbreaks are not happening in schools. We are seeing news article after news article that children, especially K through 12, are suffering a mental health crisis, and a big part of this is the inability to be in school. The teachers have been given the opportunity to be vaccinated, they've been deemed essential workers, and the vaccines have been proven to be effective. Our children can wear masks, and the CDC has dropped its guidance to 3 feet, allowing many more children to be in the buildings. I'm urging you as a school board to move forward now with first and foremost getting 4th and 5th graders the same opportunity that every other student in the school system is getting, and allowing them to have access to their teachers 4 days a week with in-person instruction. It's also time to commit to 5 days a week, full day in-person instruction in the fall. Parents and students deserve this commitment now so we can plan for what we'll choose to do for our children in the next school year. The teachers, our superintendent, and the administration also deserve that commitment so they can determine the needs of the school system. Teachers should not be asked to provide both virtual and in-person instruction at the same time. The biggest counties in Virginia, including Alexandria and Fairfax, have already stated they're committed to this. If they can commit now, so can we. You owe it to us, to your constituents, to commit and give us what we deserve in a public school education. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Strassheim. Next up, we have Jennifer Mccoon.
Hi, Jennifer McCune here. I'm in the Rivanna district. I currently have 2 kids in the school system and 8th grader in Sutherland and a junior in Albemarle High School. I have one who graduated yesterday, feels like it, last year from Albemarle High School. And I want to talk about going back to 5 days a week. I think we've talked a lot about the academics for our children and how it's not providing what we need. As we all know, that is not going to happen. But we also need to talk about the relationships that everybody is losing out on. When we think about our former lives and our past lives and what we did when we were younger, it's those relationships that we forged when we were in school, our relationships with our teachers, the role models that we got, what we learned from our peers, both younger, older, the same age group. So school is so much more than academics, and you cannot get that in a Zoom environment. You're not going to get that at all. And having the kids interactive, not only learning from one another, but dealing with the awkwardness of some of the social interactions, understanding, because our whole lives we're going to interact with people. So if we're only looking at the academics, we're not realizing how much more powerful and wonderful school can be with our emotional well-being, our mental well-being. My daughter, who's an 8th grader, I asked her, "Are you happy to be at school?" She's doing 2 days a week. And she was like, "Yes, Mom, yes." And I'm like, "What is making you so happy about it?" She's like, "I have friends, Mom." I mean, what a concept. She has friends. You can't have friends when you're on Zoom. And I said, "Anything else?" She said, "I'm learning, Mom." She said, "I just am not learning when I'm on Zoom all day. I space out. It's not the same." So yes, I advocate for what other people are saying, 5 days a week. It's for all our age groups. It's not elementary, middle, high. It's everybody. All of our children deserve that. Other schools are doing it. I know we can too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. The next speaker will be Christine Koenig, who I did see on.
Hi, I'm Christine Koenig, Whitehall District. So I guess I'll just get started. I only have 2 minutes. Augusta, Chesapeake, Chesterfield, Fauquier, if I'm saying that right, Greene, Hanover, Henrico, Powhatan, Prince George, Roanoke. These are 10 Virginia counties that are currently offering 5, or in some cases 4 for secondary, in-person days a week to their students. Several since the beginning of the year, and a few will be starting in the upcoming weeks. It is not an exhaustive list either. These are simply the counties I personally know about who have made it work. This tells me that it can be done, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be committing and planning for 5 days a week for all students, at least by next school year. The data has overwhelmingly shown schools are safe for both teachers and students, even without vaccination. The data has shown there is very real damage being done right now to our children emotionally, socially, and academically. Damage that unfortunately will have lasting and potentially lifelong effects. It is clear the lowest risk option is to bring children back into school full-time next school year. I'm amazed, and not in a good way, that after all the published school studies, medical and government guidance, academic testing data, and parent and student testimony this past year, that parents like me are having to sign petitions to insist the ACPS administration and school board give their children the education they deserve. Other counties in the state have already committed to a full-time 5-day start next school year. Why hasn't ACPS made that same pledge to put the needs of their students first above all else? Why are we waiting to make that commitment when it is the right thing, the best thing, and the safest thing to do? Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Koenig, and I'm sorry to pronounce your name. I see your name on Facebook all the time, and I guess I just in my head have a different way that I think it's pronounced, so I apologize. The last 4 speakers are going to be Dr. Shauna Spanos, Janie Perdahoski, excuse me, Ethan Adams, and Hunter Stokes. So Dr. Spanos, if you are on.
I'm here.
Yeah, I see you.
Hi there, good evening. Yes, I am the mother of 3 girls in the Whitehall district. They go to Western, Albemarle, and Henley. I am here to advocate too that our children return to 5 days a week in-person school no later than this fall. As of Tuesday, it was announced that everyone aged 16 and older will be eligible for the vaccine by April 16th. By this fall, all teachers, staff, and persons should have either received the vaccine or personally chosen not to receive it. If they chose not to vaccinate, that's their own personal choice. based on their own assessment of the risks and benefits of coronavirus disease versus side effects of the vaccine. At that point, no further accommodation should be made. As for the vaccine for our children, which may or may not be available this fall. However, our children are either asymptomatic or have mild illness. Per Yale, Boston Children's, and Johns Hopkins websites, the feared post-COVID illness of multisystem inflammatory syndrome, or MIS-C, is rare, and of those, most recover quickly. My friend and colleague, Dr. Peter Dean, is a pediatric cardiologist at UVA and a parent of children in this district, says kids don't get sick from COVID. There is no way that should be a reason to keep them out of school. Even kids with MIS-C universally have return of normal function. Importantly, today, UVA announced its plans to return to in-person instruction and normal operation as its default mode this fall. My family and I choose to live here in Albemarle County, and one of the driving factors is the public school system. However, if we do not return to 5 days in person in the fall, we will look at relocating outside of the county. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you so much for those comments. Next up, we have Janie.
Good evening. I'm Janie Podorotsky, a resident of the Ryle District and a member of Church of the Incarnation and Impact, our community's interfaith social justice organization. I'm speaking tonight in support of plans that Superintendent Haas spoke of during the county budget meeting on March 15th to expand the extended day enrichment program to include pre-K students once again. This expansion, along with other plans to bring more equity to the program, will allow families to utilize it for their preschool students and to move forward in recovering from this pandemic year. Impact's congregations heard many stories during our listening process this fall of families struggling to access affordable preschool and childcare. Preschool is an important step toward closing the achievement gap in our schools. For working parents, having after-school care available at the end of their preschooler's day is essential to be able to use the county's preschool program. Mr. Page, Ms. Carlson, and Dr. Acuff all publicly stated their support of this pilot expansion of EDEP to the over 1,200 community members present at our Nehemiah Action last week, and I want to thank them for that on behalf of Impact. I sincerely hope that the rest of the board will also support this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for those comments, Ms. Podorotsky. The next speaker will be Ethan Adams, who I did see on. Hi, Ethan.
Hello, my name is Ethan Adams. I'm a 10th grader at Monticello High School, and I'm also a Boy Scout with Troop 37 in Charlottesville. I'm speaking today about my plans to complete my Eagle project on my way to achieving the Eagle Scout rank. My project is to build a Gaga pit for Stone Robinson as a part of their new fitness playground that they just had installed. The game of Gaga Ball is simple, fun, and safe, and I've played it many times with my friends. Building the Gaga Ball pit will provide a fun new game for students at Stone Robinson, as well as the soccer kids who use the soccer fields for practice and games after school. I have met with a representative from Stone Robinson who is very excited about the project, and she has helped me to pick out a great location for me to build the pit. I have a materials list and a donation sign up that I will use to gather materials for my project, and I have a troop full of scouts ready to help me build it, and I'm very excited to get started. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update, Ethan. The last speaker will be Mr. Stokes.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and also to your service to our community. My name is Hunter Stokes of the Samuel Miller District, and my wife and I have 3 children attending Albemarle County Public Schools. I implore you on behalf of my family and many other like-minded families to take a cue from other school districts across the country and commit to full-time in-person learning in the fall. Meaningful relationships, academic progress, and a strong sense of community are not attainable in a virtual environment. Yet, the core purpose of ACPS, as stated on its very own website, is to establish a community of learners and learning through relationships, relevance, and rigor, one student at a time. Your actions, or lack thereof, are growing increasingly difficult to reconcile with your mission statement. I'm deeply concerned for our children's mental health and academic development. They are falling behind their peers in the local private schools and other public school districts, where decision makers have the guts to deal with the fallout from a very small but vocal group that would be satisfied if our children stayed at home forever. Furthermore, despite the degree to which equity is cited in almost every decision made, isn't it obvious that the children in disadvantaged households, the ones without a parent at home to assist with virtual learning, the ones without the financial resources to augment the curriculum with private tutoring, the ones without even the most basic needs, such as reliable internet service, are the children that suffer the most? The longer status quo persists, the further the gap widens. Our kids deserve better. Parents deserve better. ACPS should commit now to full-time in-person learning in the fall, supported by a thoughtful, considerate plan that provides a safe environment for all stakeholders. My family moved to Albemarle County for the schools. It would be a tragedy if we moved elsewhere because of them. Thank you in advance for your consideration.
Thank you so much for those comments, Mr. Stokes. That concludes our public comment, and I hand the Zoom back to you, Chair Page.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Carlson. And again, thanks to all of our speakers who spoke during public comment. We will now have our COVID-19 update with Dr. Patrick McLaughlin and Mrs. Eileen Gomez.
Thank you, Chair Page. My name is Pat McLaughlin, the Chief of Strategic Planning for the School Division, and I'm here tonight with Eileen Gomez to give the April 1st COVID-19 status update. As the board recalls, we follow a 5-step guide to reopening, to making a reopening decision as provided by both the Virginia Department of Health and the Department of Education. And one of those steps we report on each board meeting, determining the level of community transmission in our schools. And I will turn things over now to Eileen to take us through our latest case incidents and percent positivity numbers.
Thank you, Dr. McLaughlin. I'm Eileen Gomez. I'm the school nurse coordinator, and this year also the pandemic coordinator for Albemarle County Public Schools. And I'm going to present this week's numbers. As you can see from the Albemarle County incidence rate on this slide, the 7-day floating or moving average of number of new cases per 100,000 people as of today is 9.7. Cases have been decreasing for the past 8 days, which does not exceed the threshold of 14 days. So this is considered a fluctuating trend. The 7-day floating average or moving average as of today for the percent of COVID tests that were positive is 2.0%. This indicator has been decreasing for 8 days, which does not exceed the threshold of 14 days. So this is also considered a fluctuating trend. The city of Charlottesville, the 7-day moving average of the number of cases per 100,000 residents as of today is 13.4. This indicator has been increasing for the past 15 days, which exceeds the threshold of 14 days. So this is considered an increasing trend. The 7-day average of the percent of COVID tests that were positive in the city was 1.7%. This number has been rising for the past 19 days and is also considered an increasing trend, although slight.
Thanks, Eileen. And as you recall, also, the CDC has given us a couple of other ways to look at this in terms of our core indicators. One is that they have a core indicator of the total cumulative cases in Albemarle County over the past 7 days. And that they update this data now once a week, and the data is from the previous Saturday each week. So as of March 27th, our cumulative caseload in the county was 91.98, which is in the substantial range. And our percent positivity for the past 7 days was 1.4, which was in the lowest range. When these two numbers aren't in the same range, the CDC recommends following the guidance for the higher of the two ranges. As you can see, we have come down for the past 3 weeks from the high range into the substantial range and appear to be holding pretty steady at that lower level. If you remember also that we take the level of community transmission and couple that with the level of school impact, which we are rating at low. We have 0 or sporadic cases. We have sporadic cases of COVID in our schools with no evidence of in-school transmission. Our student absenteeism is at a low level, and staff capacity is normal. And they also ask us to take a look at a chart that puts these two things together. So when we have our community transmission rate at the orange level, which is substantial, and a low impact to schools, that puts us in this top right quadrant in terms of where we should be with our schools. And the main takeaway from that is that we should be open for in-person instruction to the maximum extent possible, ensuring 3 to 6 feet of distance for our students and a minimum of 6 feet of distance for our middle and high school students. And so that we've been at that level for the past couple of times that we've talked with the board, and Eileen and I would be happy to take any questions or comments from the board at this time.
Do we have any questions from board members? Or
Dr.
our-
McLaughlin, I see on the chart that it is 3 feet for younger students and 3 to 6 for middle and high school. Is that the current CDC guidance?
That is the current guidance that has been given to us by the VDH and the Virginia Department of Education. The CDC guidance has changed recently, as you know, with a 3-foot indicator. We are expecting an update at some point from both the VDE, from the VDH and the DOE, perhaps to address that, but we do not have one in updated information from them yet.
I mean, this is more of a building capacity issue. If we were to go to 3 feet, I guess, how many additional kids can we get in a classroom? I mean, I've toured a couple of schools, and the geometry or the geography of putting all this together is quite complicated.
Yes, that is something that staff is currently studying right now, what impact that would have on classroom capacity.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on our COVID update? Okay, if not, thank you, Dr. McLaughlin and Ms. Gomez. Our next item, Dr. McLaughlin is coming to us again with the 21-22 school division calendar.
Yes, thank you again, Chairman Page, Pat McLaughlin, Chief of Strategic Planning for the school division. And I'm here now to give you an update on the school division calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. As you recall at the meeting we had on March 11th, staff brought forward a revised 21-22 school year calendar that sought to create dedicated time for professional learning community meetings next year. One of the silver linings that's been identified during the pandemic was the enhanced ability for PLC meetings, both for our school-based PLC teams and for cross-divisional PLCs to meet remotely. To ensure that dedicated time, we proposed adding 5 half-days to the school calendar next year. When coupled with existing professional development days that were already in the school calendar, that guaranteed 1 day per month of dedicated time for this work. Board feedback that night centered around the impact the additional half-days would have on instructional time next year. And based on that feedback, we present the board with 2 calendar options for next year. Draft A, which is included in your board packet, is the same draft that you saw on March 11th with the additional half-days. Draft B in your board packet adds 2 additional instructional days to the calendar to account for the instructional time lost on the half-days. In Draft B, the school year would be 182 instructional days as opposed to 180, and would begin on Monday, August 23rd, instead of Wednesday, August 25th. So we're hoping tonight that the board will take action on one of these calendars, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have that will help you with your decision-making.
Any questions? Okay.
Oh, sorry. I just had a question about any theory around, I know that we usually start on a Wednesday, or at least in the time that I've been in the division, we've started on a Wednesday. Is there any theory to that?
I think that a large part of that has been tradition, that we've had 7 professional development days front loaded onto the school year. I anecdotally certainly have heard that it's nice sometimes to start with a shorter week for students to get them back, but I don't know that there's any research backing either of those theories.
And then, so would the professional development just back out equally with that one?
That's right. Because we would be adding professional development into the calendar, we would be taking away 2 of those professional development days at the start of the year. So we would have 5 professional development days for teachers in a pre-service week, and then start classes with them on that Monday.
Thank you.
Patrick, I had a quick question, or maybe it's not quick. Let me not preface it like that. Did you give any thought to, I know we got some letters from constituents about having the half day be in the middle of the week versus Monday or Friday. Did you give thought to why can you explain why it's in the middle of the week?
We thought that was a time when it would be better used by staff in the middle of the week, instead of, I think sometimes it's easy on a Friday when you have a half day to maybe not be as attentive to the work that should be going on that afternoon.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. The other question I had was the public comment about EDEP. Have you guys looked into whether we can make it so that on half days EDEP can extend the full day?
That, I think I would defer to Dr. Hairston. I don't know the answer to that myself.
Okay, yeah, well, I guess I would just like to note that is something I'd be interested in, just for continuity of.
Would you repeat your question, Ms. Carlson?
Yep, I was asking, one of the public speakers asked whether or not, when we have these half days, if EDEP could extend the full day, because I guess in our prior practice, we haven't run EDEP on half days. And since we're adding in all these half days, would that be a possibility or something we can consider?
My response at this point is that the program could be offered for those students who are currently signed up for the program, but for expansion for families and students who are not, it would be very unlikely because of the limited number of people that we could serve based on staff.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, just the people in the program, if they could at least utilize it on those.
We most likely could do that.
And Ms. Carlson, one thing I neglected to mention also about the both drafts of the calendar is that they now do not mention asynchronous learning on the second half of the half days, based on some feedback we received from the board. So they will be half days, only for students.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
I don't know how the board is feeling, but I personally would want, it's a little weird. I don't know if this is going to be a split decision or not. I would move that we support Schedule B, if I'm saying that right, the one that moves it to 182 instructional days. So I guess I'll go ahead and make that motion and see if anyone would support it.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Ms. Carlson and second by Dr. Acuff that we move to calendar B, which is a calendar showing 182 days rather than 180 days. Any discussion on the motion?
I guess I do have questions about Dr. McLaughlin. Did I hear you correctly that the professional development that would be going on the week before and would have been going on the first 2 days of that week would be eliminated for those 2 days in order to pick up the extra days in school for the students? Is that correct?
That's correct. We would have 5 full days of professional development for teachers before the school year began. And then with the addition of those half days, 5 half days of professional development, we'd actually recoup a little bit more professional development than we would have originally had. We'll have 2.5 days spaced throughout the school year of professional development instead of the 2 that were the Monday and Tuesday at the start of the year, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's an either or. It's not an okay, no, because we had the 2.5 days already on the calendar. And then we're taking the two earlier ones that were already part of the 7 days away. I guess I'm just not quite getting that.
So in our the main delineator between calendar A and calendar B was the board had requested that we was concerned about the loss of instructional time for when we added the half days in. So to account for that, we added 2 days of instructional days to the start of the school year and eliminated 2 days of professional development for that. So, and again, I guess Chair O'Connor or Mr. O'Connor, Alcaro, if we go back to the original adopted calendar, when you compare it to that, it would have 1 half day more of professional development than the original developed calendar.
Okay. We need 990 hours of student time during the year. We get that under calendar A already, correct?
We get that, we get far more than 990 hours every year. We build our calendar around the 180-day threshold generally. And so calendar A has 180 school days over 990 hours. Calendar B has 182 school days, and again, well over 990 hours.
So in the sense of what the legal requirements are, there is not a significant difference in terms of hours for students. And we are giving up a possible 2 days of professional development for the teachers. Is that pretty fair?
No, that's not accurate. The
Okay,
2 days that you're not having on the front end are being distributed throughout the year.
In calendar B. In calendar A, we would have 2 additional days of professional development at the expense of 2 days of instruction.
And I just wanted to say something really quick. We're using the word professional development, and there's a big distinguisher here. At the beginning of the school year, it's true, it is professional development in the sense that it's in abstract, often from the presence of current data about student performance. What we look at when we do professional learning community time is that it's what we would call job embedded professional development, that the teachers are meeting in teams to look at their pacing, to look at their curriculum and how things are going currently for the students that they have with them. And then they make real-time adjustments to their pacing, curriculum, and intervention for their current students during that cycle. So there's a big distinguisher between professional development at the beginning or the end of the school year when you're not currently looking at your assessment data for those current students and being able to offer it on a regular basis during the school year. These will not be professional development times where you bring in a speaker or you provide what we call sometimes spray and pray teaching and learning for educators. This is time where teachers are going to roll up their sleeves, work together just like they are every Friday this year. So it makes a difference for their students in the current year.
Dr. Haas beat me to the punch. I was going to say something along those lines, that I think from what some of our public commenters said about pushing it all to the summer or later, misses the point of the embedded PD days, which are the professional learning communities, which is part of the strategy to address learning loss and ongoing issues in a real-time basis. And I think that's an important distinction.
Do we have any other comments before we take a vote on the motion?
I have a comment. It's less about calendar A versus calendar B, but more just about the PLCs. And and I appreciate that they'll be doing real time looking at data, and I think I'm all for that. But I'm also hopeful that there will be accountability as a part of that, especially since we're taking the time time away from the students right there. So I was just wondering what accountability measures we'll have in place.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is a conversation we're having right now, pending the board approval. So one thing I would say is that it's scheduling them on Wednesdays is really, it's not about, it's about, we know that on Mondays and Fridays, that's when we have the most heavy leave usage by our employees. People just tend to do that because they can just kind of line their ducks up in a row and be at work for 4 days, and then they're just what people do. So it's not that we don't think they'll be attentive or maybe won't get down to business. It's just Wednesday is a good day to do it. It's midweek, and you can also make some quick adjustments and turn things around by Friday. So what we will do is on these days, because we have become really good at teleconferencing, is start out with a division-wide conversation among me and the elementary schools, where we will kind of lay out the plan for the afternoon. We will talk about the work products that we want at the end of the session around data analysis, where their students are and what their plans are moving forward, so that we can be impactful. And then we'll do the same thing with the secondary schools. We'll start out tight at the division level, and then they'll roll out into school meetings and then into grade level and subject area meetings. But there will be a product focus. They will be required to develop plans for students who need extra time and support, and also to make adjustments in their pacing and curriculum so that they can stay on track. So that's typically how the successful schools that do professional learning community well have a product focus requirement, not just taking minutes about what they talked about that day, but what did they produce that's going to move students forward.
So as you look at that PLC model in this year, what do you see as the successful outcomes? Like, what does that look like to you, and how would we be able to gauge that?
So I think that the success for this year, probably for one thing, is having that time, and it is on Fridays this year, the asynchronous Fridays, has allowed for our teachers to all meet together to develop common pacing on the grade levels. That was something that we didn't necessarily have before across the school system. You might have it within one team at a school, or maybe a grade level in a school, but to have that, so that what that does is it starts to build a guaranteed viable curriculum at the base of your, we call it a pyramid of interventions. So everybody's starting at the same place and providing the same instruction. And then they also develop common assessments. That has also been a byproduct of the work that's gone on this year, is teachers using similar assessments to assess what we call power standards. I've heard stories anecdotally from schools where they really knew that they didn't have as much instructional time as what they've had in the past. So they weeded out some of the extras that are not necessarily a top priority and boiled it down to power standards, so that they could test what they thought would be the most important things for students to learn. And then the success for that is the intervention that goes on to help students. And what we see is students improving in their performance on their reading and their math. And at the secondary level in particular, the conversations I just had a high school principal PLC, for want of a better term. We only met one time to talk about on-time graduation last week. And the way they've structured that is around a professional learning committee where the principals are meeting with school counselors and looking one at a time at their students on their caseload, looking at where they are with their grades, reaching out to teachers, and getting extra time and support, and bringing those students in if they can come in to make up those grades. So you see that halfway through the year, we had a much higher rate of students that had failed classes, and those students recovered those classes. And you're seeing the same thing now, only happening in a more timely fashion because the schools have adapted to the schedule. So what you'll see is ultimately we should see better performance across all of our enrollment groups when we have full school. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair to hold all the teachers to the same standard as we would if we had everybody coming in person like we normally do. But we really should see enhanced performance across our enrollment groups, that equity table should start moving, and gaps should be closed for our students. That really is the ultimate goal. High quality teaching and learning for all the students. Students that exceed the standards, they get enriched and they keep moving. The students that need extra time and support get it faster and don't have to be pulled out for long periods of time after they haven't been successful. So that's what you're looking for. Not a post-mortem each year, but as the patient needs help, they get the help they need, and we provide that support.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, and I appreciate all of what you're saying there, is that, and I know that we are currently in an odd year, and we will be in an odd transition year next year, and it'll probably be odd for a long time. But I guess what I would love to see, because I think I hear about the PLC model as one, it seems like a big part of high quality education for everyone, right? And so I just would love to see metrics around that, the ways that we can, as a board, hold that accountable, that system accountable. So that's just what I would like to see in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I wanted to make a quick plug and say that I'm in support of Calendar B because I do think we should be prioritizing making sure we're not losing instructional days in order to do this. While I agree with offering expanded professional development, I also know there's been a ton of disruption to student learning, and I think it's worth it to get those 2 extra days, even though it's only 2 days.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Carlson. All right.
Oh, I had another question actually. So I know that we're switching the front end PD to the in-time PLC. And I guess I just wanted to get a sense of, I don't know anything about the front end PD. I want to get a sense of, Dr. Haas or anyone else, from Central or anyone else to talk about switching those things and how that will affect both teachers and students.
I see Ms. Collins has appeared.
I can answer some of that. One of the things that we typically do at the beginning of the school year for teachers is we have 2 division level days to bring the teachers in and talk about the kinds of work that we need them to do in their PLCs as they move forward. So we would put all that into one day and spread that, as Dr. McLaughlin said, throughout the school year. Many of the days at the beginning of the school year are professional development. They're also work days for teachers, getting their rooms ready and some of those pieces. So the principals would begin to accommodate that other day in the beginning of the school year by shortening some activities that they've done, and again spread them to their professional development days. The rest, I'm not sure that answered your question.
Thank you.
All right, there being no other comments.
You guys can all kick me, but I wanted to type. I know you can get mad at me, but since we got a little off track with Judy talking about Judy, I'm not throwing you under the bus, about the accountability piece, and I was going to write you a private message, but I don't want to run afoul of FOIA laws. I want to echo, I really appreciate that you brought up accountability because I think it's something that we're missing. And one thing I'd like to throw and just say out there is I think we need to start having accountability for specific schools and how they're performing, because we have schools that are making much more progress on the opportunity gap and the gap between our students than others. And that's attributable to something, and you have to have something that you're working towards. So I guess I would just like to throw that in there. I didn't want to type it to you privately, but I really appreciate you bringing up accountability because it's important. It's something that a lot of times we just, we don't follow up. So
And what
That's
I
all.
would say is that we all completely agree with that. We are currently working on, every school will have an equity dashboard specific for that school, so that we're starting to push down that accountability, because lots of times we talk about things at the central office level and they are strong coming out. They kind of get to the school level, and as they make their way in, they start to lose momentum. So one of the ways we can approach that is to bring the accountability to the school and start to look closely at that. But also, it should be not just about, in my mind, accountability is not just about negatives. We're also developing and working on a recognition system for the schools that are really making strides and making a difference in their results that they're getting. So Dr. Hairston and Dr. McLaughlin are currently working with a team of across level principals that are doing this work. And I would just say anecdotally, from the principals who have already on their own developed school level dashboards, that it's a game changer when you have that first meeting with your staff and you show them where your school stands relative to the predictive value of race, class, gender, and other special capacities on student achievement. It starts to make a difference. It starts to make an impact. The schools that have been successful in closing those gaps use the professional learning community model with fidelity. And that's why we want to, it's a bright spot that we want it to grow. And this is going to be that broken record. We're just going to stay after it until we have complete fidelity across the school system and not take our foot off the gas. We've made too many assumptions about it for too long. And so this will help us get much greater fidelity and greater impact.
Dr. Haas, I would remind us that we started doing a division level PLC with 3 grade levels last year, and we did begin to see those grade levels moving. We did a 3rd grade, an 8th grade, and 11th grade, where we brought the teachers in. We had a PLC with them. We talked about common assessments. They set short-term goals, and we saw those common assessments start changing the success of students. So we have had some success in doing that kind of work at a division. So I just wanted to remind, it's been a while since we've talked about that, but I thought that was a very highly successful strategy.
All right, thank you. All right, again, the motion that's on the floor is to adopt calendar B. So Ms. Johnston, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro,
No.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Page.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, so the motion passes. So we'll be using calendar B for the upcoming school year.
Thank you.
Our next item, the Special Education Advisory Committee Annual Report. And this will be introduced by Mr. Kevin Kirst. Mr. Kirst.
Good evening. I am Kevin Kirst, your Executive Director of Special Ed and Student Services. The Special Education Advisory Committee, also known as Ciac, is a group of dedicated professionals and parents, and individuals composed primarily of parents of children with disabilities who represent the majority of schools in our division. Their primary responsibility is to inform the superintendent, the school board, and myself on the needs of children with disabilities educated and served by Albemarle County Public Schools. Ciac is also highly valued by myself and my administrative team as they partner with us throughout the year. We get to share ideas and experiences, and as a result, we, the division, get helpful feedback and direction from the Ciac that help guide us improve the division's special services. Nicole Group, our current Ciac chair, is here tonight to review with you the Ciac annual report. Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you. Oh, and I apologize, Kate Hutloff, co-chair, is here as well, but I did want to turn it over to Nicole. Nicole.
This group, are you on mute?
is. Well, Kate?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I was, hello, hi. I was disabled my video is disabled by the host. So sorry for the delay about all that. Thank you, host, for letting me on. My name is Nicole Group, and I am the co-chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee. Kate is also joining me in case I had a catastrophe like this. The Ciac wanted again to thank the members of the school board, teachers, aides, and staff for their dedication to our children's educational needs during this unprecedented academic year, as we're all learning. The Ciac is pleased to have the opportunity to present our recommendation for the 2021-2022 academic school year. Our first priority, as mentioned in our letter, is to increase the mental health support for students and families. The Ciac strongly encourages the school board to acknowledge this deficit and act swiftly. We recommend increasing the number of mental health support personnel in every school by an appropriate factor. Currently, all schools have at least one school counselor, but current staffing is not adequate to meet the increased needs we anticipate as students recover from the trauma and isolation imposed by COVID-19. Some schools do not have a full-time psychologist available, and even those that do will likely find their caseload much too heavy for one psychologist. Additionally, we do expect that the school psychologists will have a workload that is at least equal to, if not dramatically increased, as before the pandemic. We recognize that there have been many additional duties beyond mental health support, which will require their time and effort, and increases in mental health support for students should account for this. The current counselor to student ratio cannot even begin to cover the number of students who will need support upon returning to school. Both special education and general education students will need this additional support. Our number 2 item was something we're all very excited about this year and has continued to gain speed, is continuing collaboration of the Ciac with the Contemporary Schooling Initiative, Portrait of a Graduate, and the Academy developments. We're very excited about this, but we strongly encourage that collaboration keeps growing due to the concern that our students will not fit into some of these new paradigms and learning centers proposed by the school board. Again, we've only been recently invited to collaborate, and we do thank you for this opportunity. We do wish to reiterate that the policies and procedures should be shared with all stakeholders and prior to making changes. Often changes are made without this valuable input from stakeholders. This can lead to division within our community at a time when collaboration is valued over conflict. The third item we addressed was the recovery services for special education. Recently, the county has sent out a survey for this particular focal point, so we support that initiative. And as the students return to school, we would like to see the reduction of any disproportionate suspensions for special education students, prioritize early learning, early literacy, and ensure the consistency in the applications of the multi-tier system of supports across the county. It is also important to acknowledge that the discrepancy in academic proficiency is likely to be much more pronounced following the return in person learning. You guys have discussed this greatly tonight as well, so we support that. Our number 4th item was implement the Safe Schools Ambassador Program. Stress and trauma are known causes of bullying. We supported this initiative last year, but I think it sort of got lost in the wayside of the pandemic. Given the added stress of the pandemic, it is likely we will see an increased instances of bullying behavior now and during the return to in-person learning. It is more important now than ever that the Albemarle County Public Schools have a county-wide program in place to address the causes and effects of bullying. We recommend using a proven program so that the implementation can be immediate. The Safe Schools Ambassador Program, or SSA, is an evidence-based model that works with students to teach them the skills to influence behavior and create positive changes. SSS trainers can conduct the initial sessions and then the trainer courses are offered to keep the program active. Offering a turnkey program with a documented record of success will simplify the process of rapidly improving the anti-bullying culture in our schools. We appreciate the time allowed tonight to present to the school board our 2021-22 annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Group, for your report. We really appreciate you and Ms. Hodloff and the other parents that serve on that committee. Are there any questions or comments from board members? No questions. All right, so thanks again for your report and thanks again for your great work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kurtz is coming to us again with the Special Education Annual Plan for school year 21-22. So Mr. Kurtz, back
Yes, thank you. Again, I'm your Executive Director of Special Ed and Student Services. And I would like to review for information and your consideration this go around my annual plan for 21-22, which is required in order for Albemarle County Schools to secure over $3 million in federal funding that flows through the Virginia Department of Ed. And just a quick breakdown and summary, right? Our annual plan essentially has two main parts. The first of which, Albemarle County Public Schools assures the state and federal government that it will comply with all applicable laws. And the second part is all accountability related. They want to know, the state wants to know, how are we going to spend those federal dollars? Now, this is also, there's three ways we spend the funding. Two of the three are required, right? It's before we even get started, we have to allocate monies to some mandates. The first of which is called Coordinated Early Intervening Services. And that is, Albemarle County Schools is required to put 15% of that federal grant aside in order to make efforts to decrease the over-identification of students, particularly minority students, in special education or receiving special education services. That comes to approximately $470,000, which we're going to use this coming year to employ 6 full-time teachers that serve as intervention specialists within the division. The second way we're going to spend a part of this funding is what's called our set-aside program. And set-aside is just that. We're required to set aside a portion of this funding for students that are eligible for special education services that are placed by their parents in private, parochial, independent, or homeschool programs that are located in Albemarle County. So we have a calculation, an algorithm that has resulted in us figuring out we have to set aside just under $77,000. And those funds support an itinerant special education teacher that works with the parents and teachers of these eligible students part-time, a few days a week. And in addition, some of that funding goes to support contracted speech services for about 20 students in this program. And then the third way we spend this federal funding is what's left, which is a little over $2.5 million. And what I'm doing this year, my proposal, is to fund approximately 73 special education instructional assistants. These instructional assistants work directly with students with disabilities. And that is my plan for your consideration and information that I'd hope you approve at a future date. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Kurtz on his plans for 21-22?
Mr. Kurtz, can you direct me to the page, or is it just not? I know that you mentioned that you have to have policies and procedures to deal with over-identification.
Yes.
Or disproportionate representation in special education. Where is that on the plan? I can't find it.
So it doesn't have policy. It's more of a few short sentences to say how I'm going to spend. I believe it's page 11. Yes, Coordinated Early Intervening Services, where I just state basically how I'm going to spend it at the top of the page. I believe it's 11. I printed it out. I hope it aligns.
Well, that's something in the future I would love more information on. I know that these plans often just say that you're going to do it and comply with
Yes.
whatever the requirement is, but I would like more information.
Sure. So information on what the intervention specialist, like if I'm putting it towards 6 full-time intervention specialists, what that looks like, what it does.
No, just speaking directly to the issue of overrepresentation of our minority students and how we're dealing with it. Because I know in the past you've given us updates like that.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to do that. And some of the changes that we've put in place that are different from last year. However, you want me to message that, whether it's board meeting item or information sent to you, I certainly could write stuff up for the board and communicate that out.
I guess.
Take your, yeah.
I guess for now, I'll defer to Chair Page when we're discussing schedule. For now, something written would be nice.
I could do that.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
With the interventionist specialist, the 6, how will they be distributed through the division?
Yes. So right now we are focusing on 6 schools that are working on eliminating the achievement gap that we worked with central office to really enhance those efforts. Coupled with, so I guess it's speaking a bit to Ms. Carlson's concern, coupled with support by central office and our special education coordinators that work with the schools to address any referrals to special education services. So it's chosen based on the work at central office with schools that basically we've focused on needing a little extra support. And that's been data driven. All of the schools, all the elementary schools, middle and high, they all get some form of support particularly for response intervention and making gains in this effort. But this year we wanted to switch it up and really double down with a full-time position at 6 locations. And again, it was based on achievement gap information and our efforts.
Mr. Kurtz, could you clarify just a bit in terms of the roles of those 6 people in those particular schools?
I could. Intervention specialists, not just in those schools, but across the division, are primarily responsible for direct interventions for students that have demonstrated behavioral or academic gaps or challenges. So their services are linked to our efforts with response to intervention, which includes evidence-based interventions and progress monitoring. That's their primary work. They work hand in hand with our school-based intervention teams. And then again, that branches out to professional learning communities, but their primary responsibility is the delivery of those interventions. And these are certified teachers. That's a requirement of the position.
Thank you.
I have one additional question, and I don't think it will take more than, is it 15 minutes of staff time? I guess I had a question about the recommendation that we implement the Safe Schools Ambassador Program. I guess I was just curious what, if any, I'm sorry to admit, bullying program we currently have in place, and how this compares or if we looked into it.
So that is something that I'm committed to looking into and doubling down. I've worked with Ciac and the previous director of student services, which I really think needs a nice, fresh look. And this is one option that a lot of folks are behind that I think is worth review. I just haven't done the deep dive. I've contacted the ambassador program already to set up that exploration while at the same time really doing a review of what's out in our school division, the level of training. I have not had direct involvement with bullying training myself in my role in the past, but that is an area that I've committed to working on in the next few months with the
Matt,
new.
you may speak. I saw him. He was ready to go and raised his hand.
I don't want to speak over Kevin Kirsch, though. That's dangerous. So what I would say is that I'm super excited about the ambassador program because it really puts students in the driver's seat and promotes their leadership in the schools. One of the things that the board is going to see when we roll out the strategic plan is when we look at our current state analysis from our survey data from students and other pieces of data that are aggregate, it really speaks to the fact that our students don't, to the degree that we would like them to, see themselves as in charge of their learning and being able to have agency at school. And I think that while it's certainly important to have the student ambassador program to combat bullying, it's also a great way to provide leadership opportunities to our youngest children all the way up. What we currently have in place in Albemarle County schools that we've had for a very, very long time now, and I would say it is a very successful program, is a responsive classroom. We've become so accustomed to responsive classroom that we don't even talk about it anymore. So when we talk about professional learning community, we want professional learning community to be like responsive classroom, to where it becomes just the air that we breathe, the water we drink. It just is in what we do. All the circle time, the morning messages, all those things, they're based on a rock solid curriculum to build community in a school, empathy among students, and ultimately have had a very positive impact on bullying culture in our schools. Now, that's not to say that over time, we couldn't find new ways to tackle bullying, because it is one of those things that seems to find a way, no matter how you approach it, especially when a lot of it is adult-driven intervention. So I really want to see how things work with the ambassador program. Now that's at the elementary school level. At the middle school level, we use what's called the advisory period, which is based on developmental design, which is the middle school version of responsive classroom. And so that rolled out, I think, more like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And it grew just like responsive classroom. A couple of schools embraced it. They started book studies. There's actually a book called The Advisory Period that our many teachers have read and embraced. And so they have circle time in the middle schools. It's not called morning meeting. And it is built around the same premises of building community, building empathy, encouraging leadership, encouraging all voices among all of our students. The final extension of the advisory period is freshman seminar, and also having an everyday intervention and enrichment period at our high schools. That has been a struggle since we instituted what is called the 8-period day, which requires all of our students to take 8 academic classes. When we had a 7-period day, we were able to build in a solid time every other day or every day, depending on the school, for students to meet, work with a mentor who was a teacher that they were assigned to. And there wasn't as much structure around it, so we've got some work to do with that. So we do have a pre-K through 12 way of approaching this, but again, a lot of that is adult driven, and I really am interested in seeing the evidence-based model that the Special Ed Advisory Committee has put before us. And I was disappointed that we couldn't follow through with it last year with the pandemic. So we do have things in place, but we can always get better, and this is a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
I have a question about the special education teaching assistants. 73, that seems like a lot. How many do we have now? I mean,
about double that.
Okay, are we going to have trouble finding 73 people to fill those positions?
These are positions that are already filled. It's more of a reimbursement that comes in, special revenue that comes through.
Great.
Okay, now I have one other question that I've asked before too, but just making sure that this is still true. Since we withdrew from prep for some of our services,
yes,
are we still, I know that we still have the same high quality service that we had at first, right? So nothing has been lost by us assuming some of those responsibilities.
That's correct.
Okay, right. Just verifying.
Verification delivered.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
All right, Ms. Lynn.
In line with many of my other questions. With the 6 intervention specialists, what are the accountability measures for those positions?
So
for
one,
that program?
yeah, absolutely. One moving forward is the expectation of, I mean, the biggest for me is progress monitoring, because progress monitoring, which is much like a temperature check in the right in the world of health, on the success of the interventions, and it's frequent enough that we could switch up our instructional practices. So that is one of the key areas. So not just a plan, an explicit plan of what is the issue before us and what is a matching evidence-based practice, but then that progress monitoring that happens at regular intervals. That is tracked in a management system that we currently have in place and it is up and running. So that is what we are really looking to double down on, and have met with the principals of these locations. Not that we, again, wouldn't expect that on all of them, but we are looking to do something different with our infrastructure, outreach, and support. But that's how we're going to look at our accountability measures.
So how will we be able to know that that is successful?
Yeah.
At the board level?
So at the board level, I guess it would be a report back, like how successful. That's what I hope to do. Use this as the next iteration of my efforts to really address over-identification in special education. So I could prepare outcomes at least the end of, I'd say, the third quarter next year, to go, here's what I've seen. And we keep the pulse on that all year, but some of the trends are slow in happening. The number of kids found eligible or referred, it's not as many as kids supported, but I could report back, certainly.
Yeah, I would be interested at so many things that we're looking at. You know, they have SMART goals, and then they're attained or not attained. And then I just don't, sometimes things come before us and then we hear about them and then we just have no sense of accountability. So I would like that accountability for those positions.
Will do.
Very good point, Ms. Lee. So accountability is important to us, and we will look forward to hearing about that. Any other questions from any other board members? Okay, if not, thanks, Mr. Kurtz, Ms. Group, and Ms. Hutkoff for the presentation tonight. We appreciate everything again that you are doing. So thanks so very much. We will now take a 10-minute break. So the time, according to the computer clock, is 8:28, right? So we'll reconvene at 8:38. All right, thank you. Okay, our board meeting is called back into session. We will have the superintendent's recommendation regarding the naming of Murray Elementary and Murray Charter Schools. This will be led by Ms. Jasmine Fernandez and Dr. Haas. So Ms. Fernandez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Fernandez. I serve as a project advisor and the anti-racism program manager. One of the projects that I have the pleasure of helping to oversee is, can you hear me?
Board meeting is called back into session. Yeah. We will have the superintendent's recommendation regarding the naming of Murray Elementary and Murray Charter Schools. This will be led by Ms. Jasmine Fernandez and Dr. Haas. So Ms. Fernandez. Okay.
I think someone's watching and unmuted.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Fernandez.
Okay, Ms. Johnston or Mr. Carter, are we having technical difficulties?
It sounds like someone is watching the live stream and trying to present. So,
Okay. All right, well.
Since we've heard that twice, we don't need to repeat it.
We don't need to hear it again.
We can jump right in. Are we still having that technical difficulty? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you can hear
Great.
me.
Awesome. So I help to oversee the implementation of the school name review process. And to kick us off this evening, I'm just going to share a few reminders and then turn it over to the schools. So as a refresher, on October 25th, 2018, you all directed the superintendent to include the current school division values, excellence, young people, community, and respect to the criteria for naming school buildings and facilities. You also requested that the division review the names of all schools in the division that are named after individuals. To date, you've approved the renaming of 2 schools, Mountain View Elementary and Lakeside Middle School. Mountain View's name has already been in effect, and Sutherland's new name and signage will go into effect this summer. As a reminder, our intentions for the name review process are grounded in 3 values: reflection, accessibility, and inclusion of all voices. We believe the name review process allows an opportunity for school communities to reflect on the history of their school, their values and aspirations. We also believe in the importance of ensuring there are multiple methods of soliciting feedback. And we remain focused on uplifting and centering the perspectives of all members, especially our students. I'm confident that you will enjoy hearing this evening from Murray Elementary and the Charter Public School about the creative ways that they have engaged the members of their school communities. With that, I am going to turn it over to Murray Elementary. They will kick it off, we'll open it up for questions, and then we will conclude with the charter school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez. I am Allison Dwyer Selden. I am the principal at Murray Elementary School. Thank you for this opportunity to share about Virginia L. Murray Elementary School name review process. Virginia L. Murray Elementary School, generally referred to as Murray Elementary, opened in 1960 as an all-Black elementary school. It integrated in 1965. The school was named for Virginia L. Murray, who was a supervisor of elementary education in our school division. She was the first Black supervisor ever appointed in Albemarle County Schools. As a school that opened in 1960, Murray has a long history of serving many students from a variety of backgrounds, and the building's presence is somewhat of an anchor to the Morgantown Road community where the school is located. And here's a little bit about our advisory committee. When we were informed that we would be engaging in the school name review process, we decided we wanted our committee to be highly inclusive in its composition to ensure we heard the perspectives of not only our current parent population, but also individuals from the Morgantown Road community, as the school is a longstanding part of that area and has significance for the residents, both past and present. We felt like we had a large stakeholder group we needed to engage. A few components unique to our committee is that we had a parent, Ms. Teller Stallford, as our committee chair, differing from other committees whose chairs were often ACPS staff members. Thanks to her tenacious and thoughtful leadership, we created a committee of not only the required participants, ACPS staff, parents, and community members, but also reached out to find several school alumni, to include a member who attended Murray Elementary the first year it was open. Finally, we did want our students to have voice in this process, as well as an opportunity to see firsthand what authentic engagement in a civic process looks like. Our student committee, run by Murray teachers Hollins Mills and Laura Richardson, was composed of students in grades K through 5. They met approximately 10 times during the time our committee worked. Like all school name review committee participants that have come before us, our committee members were all volunteer, receiving no compensation for the work and time that they gave. And we are very grateful for the large amount of time and energy they put into our process.
Thank you, Allison. And as Allison shared, it was such a meaningful process for our advisory committee to undergo. We followed the steps set out by the name review policy, and I'll just share with you tonight the most salient points of our discovery. First and foremost, it was so much fun to see our youngest learners engage in this process. They were so active and worked so hard, using project-based learning experiences to focus on student outreach and community engagement. After the first survey results came in, they shifted their focus over to thinking like historians, learning about the history of both the school and its namesake, Virginia Murray. And we hope that actually becomes part of the school curriculum going forward. They plan to continue their work interviewing original Murray students, like one of our committee's own, Roosevelt Barber, to make a digital archive. And they also plan to create a permanent installation in the school lobby to share with future students and families. I'm sorry, I hear my child calling me in the background. In terms of public participation, we distributed 2 community-wide online surveys, and we held 2 public comment meetings, both in February and March. Our first survey gave a brief bio of Virginia Murray and an overview of the school's history so that respondents could feel that they were making informed decisions responding. We were very pleased with the participation to both surveys, particularly the first survey with over 450 respondents, which for such a small school was really exciting to us. As you can see, both surveys, the results are very clear. The vast majority in both choosing to retain the name. And between the 2 public comment meetings, we had 8 speakers in total share their thoughts with us. And we were really glad that we heard from at least one member of each stakeholder group. That was really important to us. And in fact, all speakers supported keeping our current name. What is not included in this slide is that we also received public feedback through a dedicated email address, as well as through neighborhood listservs, the majority of which supported keeping the name as is. In following the school board policy, we also worked very hard to locate and invite a relative of Virginia Murray to our public meetings. This was a vital step for our committee because of the historic importance of the school in our community, particularly the Black community. We found a grandnephew who preferred to remain anonymous. And while he declined our invitation, he did state that education and community service have been important to their family for generations, with many of them being educators, reverends, and public servants. And we have a quote by another nephew, Michael Murray, on our website, who is quoted as saying, "Ms. Murray was an outgoing and loving person who put the teaching of children in the fundamentals of both learning and religion above everything else, and dedicated her whole life to these ends." So it was clear to our committee that the Murray family was honored that the school was named for her and it would be meaningful to them for the name to stay. So it is with great respect that we and the superintendent recommend that the name of Virginia L. Murray Elementary be retained. We believe this recommendation enjoys overwhelming support in the Murray school community, and also that the name reflects the values set forth by our school district. And I wish I had more minutes to share with you all the things that we learned about Virginia Murray through this process. So I'll pick out just a few things about her as an educator and as a person to share with you. As an educator, her standards for herself and her students were high but attainable. Her instruction style was never generic, instead tailored to the individual. And in fact, it was her excellence in improving the quality of teacher and student education that earned her the naming honor originally. She went above and beyond for her students, making sure they had food and clothes in the summer and heat and coats in the winter. And she herself was a lifelong learner, receiving her master's degree at the age of 56 from NYU. And as a person, she modeled tenacity and perseverance. In nominating her, her coworkers described her faithfulness, her unselfishness, her tremendous work ethic, and her devotion to duty. And her community contributions include church leadership positions and board positions with the American Red Cross, the Community Chest, which Allison tells me is a precursor to the United Way, and also the Association for Supervisors and Curriculum Development, to name just a few. So thank you. And at this point, we would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from any members of the board?
Not really a question, but what were some of the students' reactions in working on the project?
Well, so K through 5 was involved. So it really ran the gamut. It was quite cute. Students are so, they just don't have the trappings of adults. They don't know what they don't know. They were so thrilled to find out the history of Virginia Murray. I think it was news to many of them that the school opened in 1960 as an all-Black school. That was incredibly meaningful to them in their process. They learned about the school history of Black schools predominantly in Albemarle County. They have already gotten to interview Roosevelt Barber, so they just peppered him with some amazing questions. I think they got so much out of this process, learned so much, shared so much. Each student took what they were learning back to their homeroom and shared it with all the other students in the classroom. So it was really meaningful for the students to get this tangible experience with the history, and they're so excited to continue.
One other thing that the student committee did for us is they helped with the survey process. They created signage that they put out front. They created paper versions of the survey, inviting people to come to the front of our building and fill out a survey. And they helped us record the reminder message that we sent out to the community, to the parent community, for filling out the survey. So they sort of tried also to mimic some of our steps along the way as well.
I'm really glad that the committee uncovered some of the really positive things that Ms. Murray did. And the fact that she really does align with the qualities and the characteristics that we hold for our system today. So that's something that's really good. It shows us that the process that we have for renaming really does work. So thanks for uncovering those facts. Are there any other questions or comments from our board members?
I just wanted to say that I do appreciate the depth and of the information that we're given on this, and it sounds like a really wonderful process. So I'm glad for that.
Mr. Page, would you like to take a motion on this now, or will we do motions at the end?
We'll go with the motion. Well, we could go in segments. So yeah, maybe we'll take a motion then on this part of it. Do we have a motion?
I move that the board approve the retention of the name of Virginia L. Murray on the current Murray Elementary School named after her.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Alcaro, second by Mrs. Lee, that we retain the name of Virginia L. Murray for the elementary school that has been named for her. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, Ms. Johnston, could you take a roll call, please?
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Ms. Coulson,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Page,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, so unanimously, we have decided that the name of Virginia L. Murray will be retained for the elementary school on Morgantown Road in the county. Thank you so much again for that, for the committee who worked on that, Ms. Dwyer, Selden Dwyer, and all of the other folks, parents, and everyone who worked on that advisory committee for renaming Murray Elementary. We really appreciate all of your efforts. Ms. Fernandez, you ready
Thank
to
you
move
so
forward?
much. We are now going to transition to the charter school.
Thank you, Ms. Fernandez, and good evening, Superintendent Haas, Chair Page, and school board members. My name is Chad Ratliff, and I serve as principal of the relatively recently merged Community Public Charter School and Murray High School. To give you a brief history, Murray High School, initially called the Education Center, opened in 1988 as a school of choice and housed in Virginia L. Murray Elementary School. The following year, the program moved from V.L. Murray Elementary to our current location, the former Rose Hill Elementary School, which had just become available with the opening of Mountain View, then Cale Elementary. Our school kept the name Murray, but replaced the Education Center with high school by request of the approximately 20 students enrolled in the school at that time. Community Public Charter School, a middle school, opened about 20 years later and was originally housed inside Burley Middle School, relocating a few years later after that to our current location to be co-housed with Murray High. Of course, in February 2020, your board approved the merger of the two schools into a new single 612 school entity that harkened back to the original philosophical concepts of both schools, which is a student-centered learning pedagogical model and to serve as a lab school from which other schools can learn, as it states in board policy and in state code. This merger initiated the naming process. I'm very honored to be here to share the work of our volunteer committee, which, as you know, became much more intensive and lengthy than they were likely thought they were signing up for. But we are so thankful and delighted by their volunteer time and so appreciative of the thoughtfulness in which they put through this. Our committee composition included 5 staff members, myself included, teachers and an office assistant, 2 members of the community who who do not have children in schools. 3 students served on the committee, plus some additional feedback opportunities and special projects, in addition to just the survey feedback model. And finally, 5 parents, including parents with children currently attending our schools and parents of students with children from all feeder patterns that could possibly attend. One of our committee members also attended Rose Hill Elementary School when it was Rose Hill Elementary School. And I am now going to turn the presentation over to Miss Shelley Blakey. As you may know, the wonderful Miss Stephanie Passman served as our committee chair. She's unavailable tonight, so I'm happy to introduce you to Miss Blakey, who will address you this evening in her absence and on behalf of the committee.
Well, hi everyone, and thank you so much for having me. We also had an amazing opportunity and really loved the process of, taking the time to figure out what would be an appropriate name for this new merger of the school. So we also followed all the school board policies, and we had 2 surveys. And as you all know, our process took a lot longer than others. So we were very proud that we even had more respondents in our second survey. We had public participation. There were 2 committee meetings that we had virtually. We had emails that were addressed to the committee or our principal that really addressed concerns and thoughts that the public had about our school and what they felt might be appropriate to this exploration of a new name. What was really amazing for our particular group was that our principal was really able to talk via phone with some people in the Rose Hill community to get a sense of what was important and also to get the background about Rose Hill and also the building in which our school is currently located. With all of this information brought to the committee, we were able to extend that to our students. Our students did an amazing job of really trying to explore the historical and the geographical importance of Rose Hill. And so the students really felt like they had to be engaged in the history of the school and its surroundings before they could engage on a new journey with the merger of the 2 schools. They were able to use this information that they gathered to design a mural and also to get with the committee and brainstorm new ideas for the new school. One of the things that they did have that was really neat was a word association. And it was amazing to see what words these middle school and high school students thought about that represented their school and how they felt about each other and the staff. So after further consideration, the committee and superintendent recommend the name Community Lab School based on the fact that it captures the vision and the mission of the new school. When we were either doing our survey or getting feedback from the public or even talking with our students and staff, the word community kept popping up. We felt like this was a word that really embodied how students feel when they walk into the school, as well as the staff, to include teachers and also the parents. They feel like that school is a community. The students also really wanted lab as a word that was incorporated in the name of the school. They felt like this was a word that tied both the middle and the high school together based on the type of learning style and teaching that goes on in the school. The nice thing about this name also is that it avoided confusion of having 2 schools in the division with the same name. We just felt that, this was a long process, but an amazing one. And we feel like that this name really embodies the school, the community, and the people that it serves. Any questions for us?
Any questions for Ms. Blakey and Mr. Ratcliffe and that group?
Ms. Blakey, I think you said it so well in terms of how this captures the vision and mission of the school and how it really brings the 2 levels of the school together. I must admit that when the first time I heard about the lab school, I knew that it had to be a good idea, but I wanted to learn more about it. And your comments and Mr. Ratliff's comments really helped with that. And so I think it's a great idea.
Great.
Ms. Blakey, I'm not sure whether you can answer this question or not, but with the mural that was made on the wall, do you know who was responsible for that, or anything about it?
Yeah, I'll let Chad speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So this is actually a collaboration with Meals on Wheels, and it was an interdisciplinary project that was an art incorporation with the history social studies standards at the time of that was relative to segregation and that era. So the students worked with 2 muralists, 2 quite well-known muralists in the area, to come up with the design. So through Zoom, the muralists worked with our students as the students then worked with their teachers through the historical legacy, through interviews and things like that, and came up with pieces that combined into a whole portrait of this, which is now on the Meals on Wheels building. So it really captured the essence, I think, of the philosophical and pedagogical approach that we want for all kids at all levels, at all times, in which they're integrating the disciplines they're learning in authentic ways with a culminating project, engaging with the community throughout the process. So it was really an amazing process to watch unfold, one in which I must admit, as principal, when I heard we're going to do this over Zoom, I thought, okay, well, this might be pretty interesting to see, and right there you're looking at the end result. So it's possible to do that kind of learning and teaching and learning over Zoom, and they did a fine job with it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments for Ms. Blakey or Mr. Ratcliffe or the group? If not, could I have a motion on this recommendation?
I move that the name of our combined charter schools be named from this day going forward, the Community Lab School.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Alcaro, second by Dr. Ratcliffe, that use the name of Community Lab School for the combined charter schools here in the county. Any discussion on that motion? If not, Ms. Johnston, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Alcaro,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Acuff,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Page,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And thanks again to both committees for Mary Elementary and the Community Lab School. Your work is really appreciated by the board. So thank you so much.
Mr. Page, can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
So that was so efficient, I didn't even have to make a recommendation. But I do want to take a second, and I really want to express my appreciation to the name review committee members who participated on the school name review committees for Virginia Murray and for Murray Charter School. I had a chance to sit on a couple of their meetings, and I know from visiting with them, they put a great deal of effort and time and thoughtfulness into their committee membership. They've all been thorough. They were really thorough, as you could see tonight. And I believe that they fully met their charge, both based on school board policy and in the roles that their chosen roles as community leaders. I don't need to say anything about the recommendation, but I would say that one of the really things that stands out for me is that the policy does not speak to the level that these schools have taken student engagement into the process. The policy it lays out the dates, the times, the activities of the committee, but these school leaders and the leaders of the committees have really created a situation for students where I think, as Teller said, it's tangible. And I would say it's authentic as a process because they're really going to be part of an outcome that has meaning for them, the name of their school. And that's what high quality teaching and learning is really all about. So, I want to say that. And then what I want to say next is that we are going to begin working on Jack Jewett tomorrow. So we'll be having our first meeting with the staff at the school to talk about Jack Jewett. That will be the next school that we are working on.
Thank you, Dr. Hollis.
Thank you.
And I want to make sure that I also mentioned Ms. Stafford and Dr. Dwyer Selden, that we appreciate your work too. I don't think I recognize you enough in appreciating your work also. So thanks to that entire team for both schools. All right, our next item on the agenda, the one-time project funding for CIP, Mr. Jackson Zimmerman. Bringing up his usual role as at the end of the printed agenda. Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening, school board members. I'm Jackson Zimmerman. I'm your school finance officer. Happy April. Tonight, I'm bringing forward an agenda item regarding use of one-time fund balances for CIP projects that are being recommended by staff. This is a continuation of our financial report that we provided on February 11th, where we had a significant discussion regarding fund balance. One of the things that that is important to remember when we go back and look at fiscal year 1920, the very start of the pandemic, but before the pandemic really hit, we were having a positive financial year. We were experiencing some savings regarding health insurance. We had good enrollment, which was yielding additional state dollars. And then the pandemic hit. At that point in time, we expected significant declines in revenues, both state and local. But as the year progressed, those reductions in revenues did not take place at all. So we finished the 1920 fiscal year in an extremely positive financial position. As part of the current fiscal year, 2021, we're using $1 million in fund balance in the current year for our budget. We are going to be receiving additional revenues and have some savings in the current year. We're making a one-time payment to school staff. We expect to make that payment at the end of April. And then we're bringing forward a recommendation, as we had said during our February 11th meeting, for the use of approximately $4 million of fund balance for one-time projects to be completed for the next school year. And that does yield still at the expected good fund balance at the end of the current fiscal year using that $1.4 million. So when we start talking about the projects that we're recommending be considered, go back to the school board's CIP request that was actually adopted by the school board. School safety improvements were number one on the new projects list. Not all of those projects were funded during that time frame. And so we're bringing forward a request to address school safety issues that were part of the school board's CIP request that did not get funded. Another component that we're bringing forward is technology replacement items. Again, this was partially funded, but not completely funded. So those are some of the reasons why we're choosing these particular projects. And for the specifics of the projects that we're recommending, I'm going to be asking Ms. Lindsay Snoddy to present items on school security improvements.
Good evening, I'm Lindsay Snoddy, Deputy Director at Building Services, and I'd like to start with a little background about what we currently have in place as far as the front school vestibule configurations. Back in 2014, we had CPTED reports or evaluations completed at all schools, and CPTED stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. Something they identified during these evaluations is that the front entrances needed improvement. If you look at the picture of the right on the top, you'll see that a visitor can go into the school without going to the office first. So for the next 4 years, we worked on securing the main entry reconfigurations, started in 2014, and this work carried through to 2018. For about 13 of the schools, the reconfigurations were very simple. We could do it without major construction. But for the remainder of the schools, we did need small additions or more major construction projects. If you look on the right on the bottom, this is what Baker Butler looked like after the reconfiguration. And you'll see that a visitor goes into the vestibule, is then forced to enter through the office area where they'll go through the visitor management process, and then they would gain entry to the school. All schools now currently have this configuration. Because we have these configurations in place, it allows us to add the next layer of security to our front entryways. And this is what we're proposing tonight is a buzzing camera system that will be at the front entrance of each school, and then electronic control of the door from the main office into the school. These security initiatives will bring us in alignment with school security industry standards and in line with all of our surrounding school communities. The estimated cost for this portion of the project is about $209,000. I'm going to take you through the entryway and the doors that would be controlled. At doorway number 1, this is typically open at schools now. This would be a locked door, and the buzz and assist camera system would be mounted near this door number 1. Inside the office administrators or any administrators would at the front office area would have access to a video screen and an intercom system. When the visitor approaches the door, they would buzz in the system, and the door would be unlocked by the office administrator. And they would be allowed to come to door 2. At that point, they go through the visitor management process, and then they would be allowed entry into door 3. Door 4 would remain locked at all times as well. The second portion of this project is electronic access badge systems. This would replace keys essentially, and this could be the ID badge for the staff as well. We piloted this program at Woodbrook Elementary when we did the major addition and renovation work. Because that was successful, we were able to expand this to 2 additional schools through a security equipment grant funding through the state. And we plan these systems to also continue at Red Hill, Scottsville, and Crozet through the capital improvements. The estimated cost for bringing this to have parity at the other remaining schools is $1.35 million. Benefits of the system make it easier for staff to access the building from playground and outside learning areas. If a staff member loses a card, we can quickly and easily deactivate it, as opposed to somebody losing a key. It's a little bit more difficult to locate. The system keeps detailed logs of who's accessing the building and when, which is very helpful for administrators. Through the software, we can change the access privileges for staff members in a few seconds. And we have the ability to restrict access to the primary entrance to decrease the false security alarms that we tend to get outside school hours. And again, here's a recap of the cost for these 2 proposals we're bringing on the security side. For the entryway controls with the buzzing camera system, we're looking at $209,000. And for the electronic access controls with the badge keys, That's $1.35 million. We're gonna pause on this topic. I'm gonna introduce Dr. Christine Diggs to talk about the technology replacement program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snoddy. Good evening. I'm Christine Diggs, your Chief Technology Officer, and I'm pleased to be here this evening to talk about technology funding. The school division's technology program is funded through several programs. This slide provides a snapshot of these funding sources. The school fund operating budget supports the operations of our department, including staff costs. Staff include our technology support specialists, our learning technology integrators, and our centrally based staff. The operating budget also pays for everyday costs, such as contract services, maintenance, and licensing costs for the division. There's an annual transfer from the school fund to the Computer Equipment Replacement Special Revenue Fund to support computer replacements, specialty computers and labs, audiovisual systems, and other school-based systems. The CIP technology program, which funds classroom technology, operational support, and network operations, is what we'll be discussing this evening. In 2019, the school board requested an increase to the program of $8.2 million for the 5-year CIP beginning in fiscal year 21. The level of funding for all of our technology programs has not increased to keep pace with the increases that we've seen in enrollment, services, student to device ratios, and equipment costs. In particular, there has been no funding for display technology replacement, which I will elaborate more on in the next slide. Ultimately, the recommended increase for the CIP technology replacement program was not funded through that CIP process. The proposed key changes relate to display technologies because display technology replacement needs are a big concern for our school division. There are many display devices in schools that need to be replaced, and not having had a replacement cycle in place in previous years has created a current state of haves and have-nots across our schools. The data on this next slide illustrates that inequity. This slide reflects our current state from just prior to the pandemic. The message we hear consistently from teachers and principals is the need for modern display technology. As you can see here, 13% of our classrooms have interactive display boards, primarily as a result of building modernization projects. The proposed plan will take a phased approach because our needs are so great. The plan we are proposing, which is on the next slide, thank you, will be a two-phase approach. A $2.5 million allocation will enable us to provide interactive display boards for learning spaces in all of our elementary and middle schools. And then phase 2 will cover our high schools and conference rooms, with that funding to be determined. And now, at this point, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Zimmerman. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, staff would ask for direction regarding bringing forward the school security and technology replacement CIP items with or without amendment to bring it forward for the April 22nd consent agenda. And if the board has any questions or concerns or wants more information, we're asking the board to let us know now.
I would just like some more information, just because Dr. Diggs, you mentioned that the displays essentially were an equity issue. But I want to make sure that when we use that, we have some sense of what that actually means. So like I couldn't get a sense from the data that you provided. Clearly some have them and some don't. And I'm super in favor of replacing them, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we're clear, like what we're saying with that. So if you have any further information about, say, like where those need to be replaced, you know, if those are in certain schools, where those schools are, I would like to see those.
It's equity issues within schools. So there is a need in every school to some degree. In schools that have had some remodeling done or an addition put on, have the new boards, and then the other classrooms don't. And so even within the school, it's across the board, and it's a pretty consistent message from every administrator that they need these more modern boards. In the Crozet edition, I know the project is planned. That principal was extremely excited because as part of the project, they are slated to get some interactive boards. But it's every building, Ms. Lee.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that we can bring back in a future meeting. I'm curious. You have me curious as well, Ms. Lee, to see like maybe almost a heat map of the different schools and just what the current state is, because the data certainly is compelling with the percentage of schools that don't even have a display technology or classrooms that don't have it. It just would be beneficial, I think, to see something that showed locations. That way we could, and I'm sure you're going to do this anyway, but you're going to be directing the display technology in a way that it covers, gets out into all the schools in a distributed manner. That would be a good thing to see, I think.
So we actually have the data already. We have done with this project, hopefully on the horizon. We have done a recent inventory, and so I have all of that data on a spreadsheet that I can send to the school board and the cabinet.
Thank you.
Okay, you can see that staff would like us to give amendments or ask for changes. And then with those things, this item would be placed on the consent agenda item for April 22nd. So are there any other changes or anything that you would like to see added or subtracted from the plan that has been presented before it's brought to us on April 22nd?
I would just say that both of these projects are projects that we identified as being important, in previous years that we have not been able to fund. So I think directing some of the revenue that we do have to catch us up on the capital projects I would be in favor of both projects.
I would be too, and I think we should put it on the consent agenda, and with the data coming out, and if there are further questions about what Dr. Diggs is going to be sending out, we could have that conversation off of the consent agenda on the 22nd.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, if not, then so by unanimous consent, I think we're saying that this item can be brought to us on April 22nd on the consent agenda. No objection.
So the next item that we'll be bringing forward will be an update regarding the Crozet expansion project. This particular project does not require use of school board fund balance. However, it is an update to our CIP, and we wanted to keep the board informed on this. And I'll be asking Ms. Maya Kumazawa to do a presentation regarding this expansion.
Good evening. I'm Maya Kumazawa, Director of Planning and Budget. And as Mr. Zimmerman mentioned, since we are on the topic of the CIP, I have just a couple of slides tonight to provide you with an update on the Crozet expansion project. As a reminder, this project includes an addition of approximately 35,000 square feet by adding classrooms, support spaces, and an expanded kitchen, cafeteria, and media center. We also plan on replacing the HVAC system as well as making other improvements to the existing building and outdoor areas. The design for this project began more than 1 year ago, and in December, the school board approved an appropriation of $20.4 million in construction funds to move forward with the project. We've recently received bids to construct this expansion, and we're excited to begin the work next month to stay on our schedule for opening for the 22-23 school year. The update that I'd like to provide is that based on the information that we have so far, we're looking to appropriate an additional $1 million for this project. We had been holding this additional funding in reserve, not fully knowing how the bids would come in. We've seen that costs have increased during the pandemic, resulting in higher than originally anticipated bids. And we'd also like to move forward with additive bid items that are listed on the slide. So in summary, we will be requesting that the Board of Supervisors appropriate an additional $1 million for this project that will be moved from within CIP funds. And with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Zimmerman.
Thank you. So just wanted to let the board know what the next steps are. We will be bringing forward in the April 22nd meeting appropriations for the school board to consider for school security projects and technology replacement items. And then for the Crozet expansion updates, there will be a Board of Supervisors appropriation where we'll be requesting the additional $1 million from the Board of Supervisors as part of the CIP projects. And that concludes my presentation for the evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Any additional questions for Mr. Zimmerman?
I don't know if this is Mr. Zimmerman or Ms. Kumazawa. Is the $1 million inclusive of both the higher bids and those additional elements?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if no further questions, thank you, Ms. Kumazawa and Mr. Zimmerman for that presentation.
Thank you.
Do we have any other business by the superintendent or by board members? Okay, I do have one. Quite a few of our people who spoke during public comment talked about the 4x4 plan and whether or not, quite a few of them, at least quite a few of the students, talked about problems with the testing. So will there be any allowances, or could staff work to find out whether or not any allowances could be made for the testing of students this time, since the 4x4 has produced quite a few problems? And also maybe whether staff could just review that. I think we were just using that this year, but whether or not any other review of that plan, those plans are needed.
Would you like an answer, Mr. Page?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, all right. So a couple things. One is just a little fact check. We never did do the 4x4 schedule in the past. It was brought before the board as a budget solution during the Great Recession, and it was never adopted as a full schedule. It was, we ended up doing something called a hybrid. That seems to be a term in education when you do a little of something and a little of something else. So while, and it wasn't abandoned because it didn't work, it just never got off the ground. So I think it's important just to point that out. We actually did a lot of research before proposing it, or actually that's not true. The board voted on it and then staff kind of was trying to figure out how to do it. So we did a lot of research on it, and there's virtually no difference in student outcomes. It really boils down to whether you have buy-in from the community, buy-in from teachers, buy-in from the school staff to make it work. It's like a lot of programs like that. So that's just a historical fact because I was right in the middle of it when it was going on. So the thing to think about though is the high school principals are really not putting out to their communities that they have adopted a 4x4 schedule. For some reason at the school levels, the school counselors appear to be talking to children about different types of school schedules. And I would like to just say that they don't need to do that. So if you're a school counselor, if you're listening tonight, that's not a necessary conversation right now. The conversation really ought to be about what are going to be the best classes for children to take to support their learning needs. The second thing I will say is that the school principals are awaiting the outcome of a board decision on the schedule for next year. Because if we have 5 days a week full school, and in addition to that, if we were to have that, then we would have a fully virtual school that was not attached to our schools. So it would be its own school. Then you would not need to have something like a 4x4 schedule, because you wouldn't have virtual school students attending in tandem at their school with school students in person. So that, as you're correct, Mr. Page, that was done as a way to accommodate the hybrid scheduling that was going on this year, to try to just help students not to have to juggle too many things at one time. If we were to recommend 5 days a week in-person learning for next year, and if we were to also have a fully virtual school, which I will say we are going to be advertising a principal position for a fully virtual school after spring break, because either way we're going to want to do that. Then we would not need to do, or the principals would probably not see the need to do something like a 4x4 schedule. They could go back to the alternating day schedule, which, you know, it is true what the student said. It's a very popular schedule.
Okay. All right. A part of my question that maybe you didn't address, are there any allowances, or can there be any allowances, or is anybody sort of investigating anything that can be done to address the concerns of the students about taking a test in June for the class that was completed in January?
Well, Ms. Collins could probably speak to more about what's been occurring this year in terms of helping students get ready for the assessment. The fact is that the College Board only does the assessment one time a year. They don't make any allowances for any other types of schedules. So if Ms. Collins is still tuned in and she wants to talk a little bit about what the principals have worked out with their teachers, I do know that our teachers, and they really do put in and go the extra mile. The teachers do run sessions for students to get prepared to take the AP exams if they had the class in the fall. And that's pretty much across the board. They put a lot of extra time and effort, and when the high school teachers come forward and say that they're doing that, they're doing that. I mean, they're very motivated to help their kids do well in those exams. That still is not a great alternative. It's not the best thing, because it requires a lot of extra time and effort for both students and teachers when you do that. But it is a solution, and many school systems around the state that have adopted 4x4 schedules, that's what they do. They offer refresher sessions, things like that, prior to the APs, and that's been going on in the schools. But it is a lot.
Dr. Haas said all of it. Those sessions are already scheduled. Students know when they are. They'll be doing those as close to the test as we can have them. But many of the students are doing ongoing work through this entire semester, not just at the last minute.
Okay. All right, but for the parents and maybe for the students too appeared not to know about that tonight, can information be passed along by guidance counselors or some method to make that be well known?
We'll remind, I'll send something out tomorrow to remind principals to remind students of that. But one of the things I heard one of the young women say is that she was already doing those review sessions. So we'll continue to communicate that.
Okay.
And I mean, just my takeaway from it was they're doing those things, but it's extra because they're currently taking like a whole set of new classes, and then they're also doing the review sessions and having the extra work to do to just kind of get refreshed on it. So.
Okay. Any other business by our school board members? Okay, last chance. Okay, if not, hearing none, our board meeting for April 1st is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.